Nigerian senator suspended after accusing Senate president of sexual harassment, a case of power, gender, and politics. By WealthSphere Media. Political analyst. Abuja, Nigeria. The Nigerian political landscape has been thrown into turmoil following the suspension of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, a prominent female lawmaker, after she accused Senate President Godswill Akpabio of sexual harassment. Akpoti-Uduaghan, who represents Kogi Central, alleged that Akpabio conditioned the passage of a legislative motion on her willingness to grant sexual favors. The Nigerian Senate, however, dismissed her claims and swiftly imposed a 6-month suspension on her, citing misconduct and procedural violations. Officially, the Senate leadership stated that the suspension was due to her refusal to sit in her assigned seat, speaking without being recognized, and making abusive remarks toward Senate officials. However, critics argue that the punishment was a politically motivated move to silence a lawmaker who dared to challenge the entrenched power structures in the legislature. The incident has raised serious concerns about gender discrimination, political accountability, and the treatment of women in Nigerian leadership. With only 4 women in a 109-member Senate, Akpoti-Uduaghan's swift punishment stands in stark contrast to the Senate's failure to even investigate her allegations against Akpabio. Instead of probing her claims, the Ethics Committee dismissed her petition on a technicality, arguing that a senator cannot personally submit a petition they authored. Many see this as a deliberate evasion of the core issue, sexual misconduct, in the highest levels of Nigerian government. International organizations and human rights groups have condemned the move, warning that it sends a dangerous message that female politicians who challenge male authority will face severe consequences. Beyond the immediate controversy, this case reveals deeper issues within Nigeria's legislative system. Experts have warned that failing to conduct an impartial inquiry into Akpoti-Uduaghan's allegations sets a dangerous precedent where those in power can use disciplinary measures to suppress dissenting voices. The suspension has sparked public outrage, with many calling for independent oversight to prevent the legislature from becoming a tool for political intimidation. As legal proceedings and public pressure mount, the Nigerian government faces a crucial test of its commitment to democratic values and gender equality. The handling of this case could either reinforce the status quo or mark a turning point in the fight for fairness and transparency in governance. The allegations and the Senate's response. The allegations against Senate President Godswill Akpabio have ignited a national debate on power, accountability, and gender dynamics in Nigerian politics. Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan has publicly accused Akpabio of making inappropriate advances, allegedly suggesting that her proposed motion would only receive favorable consideration if she took care of him. Akpoti-Uduaghan claims that when she refused, Akpabio and his allies began a campaign of intimidation, which culminated in her suspension from the Senate. The accusations, which have been widely covered by national and international media, are among the most serious claims of sexual misconduct ever leveled against a sitting Senate president in Nigeria's history. Despite the gravity of the allegations, the Nigerian Senate moved swiftly to dismiss her claims on procedural grounds. The Senate's Ethics Committee argued that Akpoti-Uduaghan violated submission rules and refused to investigate the matter further. Instead of addressing the accusations, the Senate leadership turned its focus to disciplining Akpoti-Uduaghan for alleged violations of chamber rules. The Ethics Committee's decision to reject her petition without due investigation has drawn condemnation from women's rights activists and legal experts who argue that it reflects a broader culture of impunity surrounding sexual harassment in Nigerian politics. Akpoti-Uduaghan has remained resolute in her stance, rejecting the legitimacy of her suspension and vowing to continue advocating for justice. "This injustice will not be sustained," she declared in a social media post, reaffirming her commitment to serving her constituents despite being locked out of her legislative duties. Her legal team has filed a lawsuit against Akpabio, seeking 100 billion naira, 65,509,000 United States dollars in damages. The case, now pending in court, could set a major precedent for how Nigeria's political institutions handle allegations of misconduct against high-ranking officials. Gender and power dynamics in Nigerian politics. The suspension of Senator Akpoti Uduaghan has exposed the deep-rooted challenges women face in Nigerian politics. Despite progress in many areas, women remain severely underrepresented in governance, with only 4 female senators in a 109-member chamber. Nigeria has one of the lowest levels of female political representation in Africa, and the systemic barriers against women in politics continue to hinder progress. The 2023 elections saw an even further decline in female participation, reinforcing concerns that Nigeria's political system remains structurally hostile to women seeking leadership roles. Women's rights advocates have strongly condemned Akpoti Uduaghan's suspension as a blatant act of patriarchal suppression. Activist Mabel Adinya Ade described it as a stunning display of patriarchal impunity, arguing that the move was designed to send a chilling message: speak out and you will be punished. The incident bears similarities to past cases where male politicians accused of misconduct faced little or no consequences. In 2016, then-Senator Dino Melaye was accused of threatening to sexually assault Senator Remi Tinubu, now Nigeria's First Lady. Despite widespread outcry, no disciplinary action was taken against him, reinforcing the perception that the Nigerian political system does not hold powerful men accountable for allegations of misconduct. For meaningful change to occur, experts suggest the need for independent bodies to investigate sexual harassment allegations within government institutions. Nigeria must also strengthen legal protections for women in politics, ensuring that those who come forward with allegations are not punished or silenced. Without these reforms, incidents like Akpoti Uduaghan's suspension will continue to deter women from entering politics, further marginalizing their voices and weakening Nigeria's democratic institutions. Public reactions and protests. The suspension of Senator Akpoti Uduaghan has triggered widespread protests across Nigeria, with activists demanding her reinstatement and calling for an independent investigation into her allegations. Civil society organizations and human rights groups have held demonstrations in Abuja, condemning the Senate's actions as an attack on free speech and gender equality. The Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SIRAP, has also threatened legal action against the Senate, describing Akpoti Uduaghan's suspension as patently unlawful. Meanwhile, counter-protests have emerged, allegedly organized by Akpabio's supporters, calling for the senator to apologize. This public outcry highlights the broader societal struggle over gender rights and political accountability in Nigeria. While some argue that the Senate acted within its rules, others view the suspension as a deliberate attempt to silence a female senator who challenged a powerful male leader. The protests have drawn international attention, with global organizations monitoring the case closely. The United Nations and international human rights bodies have issued statements expressing concern about the implications of this case on women's political participation in Nigeria. As the legal battle unfolds, the outcome of this case will have significant consequences for Nigerian democracy. If the courts overturn Akpoti Uduaghan's suspension, it could set a precedent for holding male politicians accountable for misconduct. However, if the Senate's decision is upheld, it could reinforce the message that female lawmakers must conform to the established power dynamics or risk political exile. Regardless of the final ruling, this case has already ignited a crucial conversation about the treatment of women in Nigerian politics and the urgent need for systemic reforms. What happens next? Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan remains resolute, stating that her suspension will not deter her from representing her constituents. Her legal battle against Senate President Akpabio is expected to reveal more details about the alleged harassment and the internal power struggles within the Senate. Meanwhile, advocacy groups continue to push for transparency in handling such allegations, urging the Nigerian government to strengthen protections for women in governance. The resolution of this case will serve as a defining moment for Nigeria's commitment to gender equality and justice. If Akpoti-Uduaghan is reinstated, it could signal progress in the fight against gender-based discrimination in politics. However, if her suspension remains, it may discourage other women from entering leadership roles, reinforcing a political culture that marginalizes female voices. Regardless of the outcome, this case has already reshaped the political discourse in Nigeria, highlighting the urgent need for reforms that protect women's rights and uphold democratic principles. The world is watching, and Nigeria's response to this crisis will determine whether its institutions serve all citizens or only those in power.